As natural wood species go, redwood is in a class of its own. A sustainable alternative to tropical hardwoods, redwood is grown and harvested to the highest environmental standards in the world. Named for the dark red heartwood at the center of the tree, redwood imparts natural beauty, warmth, and durability to interior and exterior building applications, including decking, fencing, paneling, siding, exposed beams and timbers, pergolas, and other shade structures. To learn more about redwood from Humboldt Sawmill, please visit getredwood.com.
Well, at the risk of beating a dead cape, this comes from user 7188984. I own a 1940s Cape Cod style house outside of Buffalo, New York, climate zone 5A. I'm in the process of electrifying it. A heat pump was installed last summer, and this year I'm getting solar panels installed. But before having the solar put on the roof, I'm planning to replace my 15 to 20-year-old asphalt shingles, and it seems like a good opportunity to add some additional insulation. In the summer, the upstairs bedroom gets quite warm, while the downstairs and basement are relatively comfortable. Can exterior roof deck insulation be installed with closed cell spray foam insulation already in place under the roof deck? Here's the stack up. The existing roof is about 950 square feet. It has a 912 pitch. There's 3/4 inch tongue and groove roof decking, 2x6 rafter, 16 inches on center, and between them is 6 inches of closed cell spray foam. My proposed roof includes 6 inches of spray foam, 3/4 inch tongue and groove board sheathing, an air control membrane, 3.5 inches of foil faced polyisocyanurate, approximately R21, OSB roof sheathing, ice and water shield, and roof underlayment. Finally, new asphalt shingles will be installed on top. At some point in the future, I'd like to have the option to add continuous exterior wall insulation. I'm planning to add a small overhang to the roof to allow for this future connection. Okay, so it delights me that our GBA poster recognized that this is the time to put exterior insulation on, because we've had this conversation recently that once you replace the roof, that's too late. What do you think
hmm
about this, Ian or Brian?
well, I can go first, and hopefully I'm not missing anything here. But the choice of foil-faced polyiso insulation for this is risky, because he has closed cell insulation underneath the roof deck, so he has vapor closed insulation beneath the roof deck. It's not vented, or at least he doesn't describe having vent channels in there. And now he's wanting to put another vapor closed material on the outside of the roof sheathing. So there is just the first thing that I would consider is either that there could be some venting installed somehow, or, well, I guess, let me rethink that statement. Maybe a vapor open material on the exterior and some kind of a vent channel on the exterior would be helpful in this roof.
Mineral wool EPS is 3.5 inches of EPS sufficiently vapor permeable? I don't know. Thoughts, Ian?
Uh, Kind of along the lines of what Brian mentioned, my first thought went to that the polyiso is probably the wrong material too, but for a slightly different reason, that it doesn't hold up its R value quite as well as EPS or other, wood fiber board, other board stock materials. Uh, but I guess I wonder, why wouldn't you just double down on the whole hot roof idea and skip the vapor open membrane on his skip sheathing and just go with uh, ice and water over that to protect that assembly, and then start new from there in a way, either using like a nail based panel, which is a OSB insulation sandwich that's common in the roofing industry. It's a bit like a thin SIPS panel, and then just do a normal roof application over that, and maybe go with a longer lasting, more stout roof material.
That I mean, it's a really good point. It's like an interesting discussion, and I tend to err towards the side of caution with these assemblies. For one, because I don't know how serious people take what I have to say on this podcast, and for and for two, because a lot of the people who I speak to in the
Mhm.
about really high performance assemblies tend to err on the side of vapor open, and which promotes dryability, which promotes durability. But Ian, you're absolutely right too. If you get the details right, and if the sheathing never gets wet, you never have a problem.
Right,
So
and
it
and you should
yeah.
add that properly ventilating the inside of the house to keep your humidity in check is an important part of that as well.
Yes.
Interior control.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that yeah, because there's multiple ways that sheeting might get wet. It might get wet from, well, in this case, it won't get wet from vapor drive likely, but it could get
Right.
wet from air leaks, and
Mhm.
where really humid air is getting to the sheeting, and it could get wet from leaks where rainwater or snow melt is getting in there. So if you can keep those things out, yeah, then really, what you describe is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
The
But
question
you
is
are
like,
you are taking a risk.
you're taking a risk, and people like Joe Stieber tend to drill into our that consciousness, like these ideas that like all houses get wet and all roofs leak and all siding leaks, and the more you hear that, the more you start to like really kind of lean towards this safe approach.
Yeah, there was a recent post on GBA where people were getting into the finer points of what percentage of rainwater gets through your siding. And I followed along with there was many of the GBA luminaries were commenting on it, and it got to the point where when you did the math and what they were saying, if your wall got 1 inch of rain on it, 1% of that 1 inch of rain is what would be expected to get through the siding, and then 1% of that would be what would be expected to get through your insulation layer, which if you do the math on it, that's 3/4 of an ounce of water per 10 by 10 area. So we're not talking about an extreme
Mhm.
amount of water in some of these scenarios. So I think that's where I go with the, probably good enough for something like that is what I'm gonna go with and hope, put the effort into getting the details right.
I'm not disagreeing, but how they know how much water is getting through the siding and
It
then
was,
there's
from uh, one of Staub's articles about, water penetration.
Mm.
Yeah, this when I see stuff in my Facebook feed of rotted buildings, it's always like egregious envelope mistakes.
Right.
No kick out flashing, no head
Uh-huh.
flashings, improper laps. It's
Random chimney sticking up from a valley.
that's that's one that always baffles me because it took a long time to make that dumb mistake, right? There was
Yeah,
all kinds of
a
people
lot of
involved
effort
in
went
that.
into messing that up. One thing that I think this writer has going for him is he doesn't appear to have a dormer on this house anywhere from the pictures that were on GBA. So the application of adding
Yeah.
insulation to this roof is a slam dunk. I mean, even his needing to add the overhang to eventually do exterior insulation on his walls, he could do that so simply by actually building part of that overhang already insulated. So all you have to do is butt your insulation on your walls up to what you've already put in the overhang, and then he'll have a continuous wrap of insulation around the whole structure, which is like the everybody's goal.
Mhm.
So he's set up for success with that house.
I would add too that, in case anyone was wondering, the time to add the overhang is when you're doing all this roofing work and adding exterior
Mhm.
insulation. I mean, if yeah,
Yes.
don't miss that
Well, you
opportunity.
have to think through the application of then putting it on the walls so that you don't end up with this like dead zone of mass framing that you now can't
A giant
insulate.
thermal bridge, right?
Right. So doing that in a way where you've already packed that out with insulation uh, and made that overhang kind of an extension of the roof and did it in a simpler way than just copious amounts of 2x6s cut and ripped down with a bevel on the top, nailed onto your wall like many of these capes end up having their overhangs added that way.
Just layers of framing
Just
is what you're
layers
s
of
yeah.
framing smacked on the outside.
Well, as we suggested earlier, this is a subject that is ripe with content. So I'll put a few of the better pieces on the Fine Homebuilding Podcast page for y'all to check out if you want to learn more.
Brian, I had
So
one other question
go
for
ahead.
you on that one with the solar panels. Is there any concern or anything that you would want to uh, have this writer work through as somebody who's done more solar panel work than I have? Like, how would you go about prepping that roof buildup layer for solar panels?
I don't really think you need to do anything because from what I have seen and from what I know about like the way that stuff, solar panels, the mounts and the racking are installed now, it's just really simple. It's really they have these self-flashing mounts, lags that drive into the rafters through these self-flashing mounts where the clip that actually holds the racking flashes the bolt. Like it's all a pretty elegant system. So I don't know
You
that
hit
there's
you hit the point that I'm wondering about
oh
though, is now
what did I hit?
your rafter is going to be many inches
And
below
yeah,
your roof substrate. So that's the part that I go
I'm
to.
going to say
You
talk to a solar installer about
Yeah,
what to do because they're the ones who you need to ask, right? And I'm
yeah.
guessing that different companies have preferred mount and racking systems, and then what you do, on your insulation layer might matter depending on what they're using.
You're right. I overlooked that, and it's true because we don't know, like, can they just upgrade to a longer screw, and is that sufficient, or is there more to it than that? I don't know.
You don't want
Yeah,
them coming off.
But
as someone who's done a lot of thick insulation, and then put siding over it, I can tell you it's hard to hit those studs and rafters
it's
with
really
an 8-inch screw.
Everyone says that. I've
Yeah,
never heard anyone say anything to the contrary.
it's
yeah,
hard even through a couple of inches,
yeah.
of rigid foam on a wall, where in knowing where the framing is.
Yep.
It's hard to hit it. I totally agree. Metal roofs have a lot of benefits, and one of them is the simplicity of installing
Yeah.
standing seam metal roofs. The simplicity of installing solar on them with the way that the clips just grab the standing seams.
Yeah, not to get back into the weeds on it, but you could do some kind of strapping on the roof to create a ventilation layer that then would be something closer to the surface that you could get your racking screwed into, but that might
Oh,
be a
that's the way to go.
conversation for
Well, so
That's
another
the way to
time.
go.
no, you nailed it because he could do an over roof with
Yeah.
strapping that creates his overhangs that he needs that we were just talking about. Create all that in one shot, insulate in between, vent channel on top. And then we just actually Fine Home Building just published an article a few issues back
With a
with
great
Josh Edmonds.
illustration.
Yeah, Josh Edmonds doing
Yeah.
exactly this essentially. I mean, a little bit because he already had the siding off the house and he was able to do sort of wrap the sheathing and the air barrier up, but pretty darn close to what you would need to do if you wanted to do all of that with mineral wool, getting a vent channel, an additional layer of sheathing, and yes, framing right there for your
And
solar
showing
mounts.
your designer or building department that drawing is easily worth the price of a subscription. So I'm going to count on you to buck up, user.
It's easily worth the price of a 3-year subscription.
Yeah.